Hi, my name's David Muncy, and I'll be doing a report on The Storm of the Century, the Labor Day Hurricane of 1935 by Willie Dry. We will look at a book overview, the historical setup that led to the Labor Day Hurricane, the Labor Day Hurricane itself, compare the Labor Day Hurricane with other historical hurricanes that have impacted the United States, the aftermath, lessons learned from the hurricane, and some of the references used to find that material. Mr. Dry told his story through an omniscient third-person point of view, so he could look at the testimonies from the victims at the veterans camps, the SS Dixie passengers and crew, and the rescue train operators. He also looked at what occurred with federal emergency managers, the investigation afterwards, and he also looked at the point of view of Ernest Hemingway, who was living in Key West at the time of the storm. He described the political and social situations in the country and the mindsets of emergency managers that led to the tragic events of the hurricane in the Florida Keys. 1935 was in the midst of the Great Depression, which had started in 1929. There were World War I veterans protesting in D.C. to get promised bonus payouts. As a New Deal project, the veterans were moved to the Florida Keys to provide work on the overseas highway railroad that was running through the Florida Keys. The living conditions were less than optimal, as some were living in tents or wooden shacks, some very close to the coastline. Many suffered from alcoholism and PTSD. The Labor Day hurricane itself began as a wave northeast of Puerto Rico. They were tracked via ship reports and barometric pressure changes from different weather offices through the Bahamas, Florida, and Cuba, as there was no satellite technology at the time. The storm made landfall as a Category 5 storm with a barometric pressure of 26.34 inches of mercury or 892 millibars. The key perspective, the average barometric pressure at sea level is 29.92 inches of mercury or 1013 millibars. This was the most intense storm by pressure to make landfall, which is different than storms that stay out over the ocean. And this record still stands to this day. The estimated winds were 185 miles per hour as it made landfall on Ismorada Key. It also had an 18 to 20 foot storm surge at landfall. To compare this with some recent hurricanes, the Labor Day hurricane compared to Hurricane Andrew and Hurricane Katrina, you can see that the Labor Day hurricane was much more intense with the pressure and the winds compared to Hurricane Andrew in 1992 and most recently Hurricane Katrina in 2005, which made landfall as a Category 3 in Mississippi. The aftermath of the hurricane was it was hard to find the total number of dead, as many were just presumed missing. But for the veterans at the labor camps, more than 250 were killed by mostly the storm surge that was produced by the hurricane. Some government missteps that led to numerous deaths after the landfall. The Weather Service was way off on the initial forecast location and intensity of the storm, as they thought it was still off the coast of Cuba and didn't realize how strong this storm was. And no one believed that this storm was actually going to be as powerful as it became, as Category 5s are a very rare entity in the weather world. The evacuation train was sent too late based on these reports to rescue the veterans and get them out of the hurricane's path. And emergency managers had not tested the reactions. They They only went by word of mouth of how long it would take the trains to get down and extract people from the Keys. And some of the emergency managers had little to no experience on dealing with a hurricane. No single person was responsible for the tragedy, but the collective response as a whole was. Another result was the extension of the railroad to Key West was discontinued. The railway was converted to a roadway, which is now the extension of US Highway 1 down to Key West. Some lessons learned from the storm were emergency managers need to be trained in the disasters that affect their local areas. With some of the emergency managers not experiencing hurricanes, they did not know what that would entail when it came to rescues or evacuations. And there was also no procedures on getting people on and off the Keys during an impending storm, and no one really knew how long it would take the train to get down and rescue the veterans that were stuck on the islands. The current day situation in the Florida Keys is there's approximately 80,000 people, residents and visitors, currently occupying Monroe County, which encompasses the Florida Keys. US 1 is the only single route in and out of the Keys to and from the mainland. Mo Most of the route is two-lane road. And also, there isn't enough fuel on the Florida Keys to gas all the cars that would need to evacuate, so they never go to contraflow on the highways to ensure that gas trucks can still get in and out of the islands. And also, meteorology is much better than it was in 1935 with the advent of satellite and radar and better trained meteorologists. Here's the references that were used to create this presentation. And here's a review of what we talked about. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and thank you.